Hello and welcome back. This is episode 105, and we are going to look at what I'm choosing to call legacy burden. We were having a discussion before we hit the record button about Gen Xers, Gen Z, what's the difference, what are the characteristics? And one of the things that came up was that Gen Xers are pragmatic, fiercely independent. Can't remember the other thing Erica said, but we all said when she read out that description, yeah, because we were all left to raise ourselves, the classic latchkey kids. But that then has a kind of pendulum swing to what we then want to bring into our families. And you find the next generation, whatever that then gets labelled, tends to have a response to that. But this burden goes back generation after generation, and you can track it predictably with historical models, with financial models. So where are we today? That's what we're going to carry on talking about. So Brett, I actually had to say pause, my friend. Tell us what you were talking about.
Judgment is congratulations. How'd you get them there? Right? How'd you do that? So it's kind of you got to look back at yourself. If there's something you don't like in your son or daughter, and you feel like they could do better, well, where did you go in supporting them in that growth? Um, it's accountability, and I think that's something that the younger generation can use as the tool. The foundational skills, I think, are really important for all of us, but most important for the kids because they have a whole life ahead of them. So giving those tools, accountability, integrity, honesty, like all of those things is really important. And that's all my judgment. It's what I say. It doesn't mean it's the holy grail or anything, but like they're going to be running the country, or the leaders, or the business owners, the workers, the people that are next in line to step up. I mean, and they're fully living it while we're retiring. So it's coming that full circle. It's just life, Whereas we talked about our first, second, or third of our life. They're right there in their first third. What are they experiencing as we're in our second third or third third?
Mm.
How are we supporting that and growing it?
I really like what you're saying because I think there's two things I want to point out. First of all, we talk about Gen X and Gen Z and all these generational discussions we have all over the place. Like everybody who is born into a certain generation are all the same. That's the first pitfall here because we're still individuals, we're still brought up in different countries and different cultures and different families, so we're all different in the first place. There is no such thing as the typical Gen X or the typical Gen Z or whatever. There's differences in all of us. Saying that, of course, part what you said there is important. The young generation will react to what they find when they become adults. So when we were brought up, we reacted to what we did find out there. And there were things we didn't like when when we were teenagers. Obviously, we went about and changed things when we became adults and we had certain roles suddenly and we were 40. We probably did things what we thought were right we didn't like about our parents. So when I was a kid, our parents were really, really strict, right? So my sister, when she had boys, she gave them more freedom because she didn't like certain aspects of strict parenthood, which came still from Victorian times. It was still stuck there a little bit, right? So we all do the things then change what we didn't like. So the question always for me is, do not give out about Gen Z in this conversation. When I hear people online giving out about Gen Z, do a check and actually see what they find. What have we left them to go into as adults? A far more healthier question than giving out they're this and they're that and they're
Totally. I mean, I think obviously we've all experienced that so-called generation gap, right? Like we all have, and generations before us have felt it, right? Oh, what is that? That's not music. That's noise. What are you listening to? Like every generation has experienced that to the next generation down. And, you know, it's sort of like that idea of leave where you're visiting the same way you got it when you came in kind of concept. And that's not what happens. Every generation goes through, and now we're doing what we're doing, our generation, making a mess of things the way every generation does. And Gen Z is reacting to that in the look what you've done and look what you've left for us. And now we have to deal with that in the way. And I think, and like to Gabby's point, the disconnect and the biggest problem is that the older generation, whatever era we're talking about, never fully wants to listen and understand through the perspective of the younger what it actually feels like without saying, well, in my time, it was like this. It's like the fuck, but it's not your time. So it doesn't matter what it was like for you. And sorry for you that you walked uphill with no shoes in the snow. But that is not how I'm experiencing life here, right? So I think that's the biggest disconnect with us, our generation here, because the four of us are in the same generation, and the younger Gen Z. Their perspective is what it is. And it's not fair or accurate, I think, for any of us in this generation or higher to get on them for going through life in a way that we perceive is not the right way, because what the hell do we know about what it's like to be a 20-year-old now? We don't, because we had the privilege of going through life without all the pressures that they're feeling in our way, but felt pressures of our own. It's not the same. It's not the same. We have to be able to listen to that with open ears and open heart and understand that while still stay to our own values. I think that's where, the best we can do is operate within our own value system and hope that by modeling behavior and the way that we hold ourselves and our work ethic and whatever it is we're trying to teach our kids, it trickles down to them in that way that they can apply it the way they see fit in their current experience of life. But that generation gap is always going to be there. And I think to Brett's point, it's apples don't fall far from their tree. So if you want to understand a kid's behavior, and you just got to take a look at the parent, and you can quickly understand, well, I can see now why, this is what I'm dealing with here. So I think that's always going to be, though. That is the way it is.
So Cicero 2,000 years ago and some anonymous Egyptian 7,000 years ago were also complaining about their young people. But I'm going to reference the book, The Fourth Turning, and The Fourth Turning is here. Historically, sociologically, financially, politically, we can see that not only do we have the generations with their apparent generation gaps, but cyclically, around 100 to 112 years, we go through a fourth generation, the fourth turning, and the things that happen are the same. There is some great societal upheaval. There has to be a sort of middle generation who are currently in power who go through the process of dealing with whatever that calamity is. Their children, their generation, learn from it and remember the experience. The third generation is distinctly separated from it. They're hearing secondhand stories. They're on the other side of the pendulum swing in trying to correct this shit that they've been left with as a result of whatever thing. And then you get the fourth generation, and they really have got no idea about it. They've got sufficient technological advances to make the next calamity bigger, worse, or more far-reaching, and so the cycle goes again. They screw everything up, the generation behind them. I mean, each generation screws it up, but that generation screws it up on a global scale. The generation beneath them then has to try and put that right. Guess which turning we happen to be in at the moment? Yes.
Does that mean that by my math, are we the generation that is globally fucking everything up? Is that what you're saying?
That is correct. But for those who are just listening, Gabby indeed raised her four fingers. Yeah, that's where we are. And I don't want to go macro or political here, but, you know, the world is in a sorry state. And maybe instead of giving Gen Z some stick, which seems to be the sort of role that is cast for us, it might be nice, sensible, even globally planet saving, if we were to actually gain some respect for them and look at the tools that that generation has been given by ours to try and get us out of the sorry freaking state that we're in, because, you know, our grandchildren's generation is depending on our children's generation. So I don't know if anybody's got any thoughts about that.
Well, the cycles are there. I just want to point out there is loads of generations involved in that cycle, because at the moment we have the baby boomers alive, then Gen X, then the millennials, then the Generation Z, and Generation Alpha is already being born. So, you know, when they're already running around as kids. So this fourth generation thing, I always see as cycles, four cycles, because there's always multiple generations alive and involved in the whole thing. But yeah, there, you know, I said by the other day, and I said, if I would be 20, how would I react to this world with whatever given handed over? And I'm not sure what I would do. You know, somebody says the characteristic of them is being entrepreneurial and doing things. Yeah, the one thing I understand is that I do not buy into the world we created, because the world we created is greedy, selfish. You know, there's no empathy anymore, and there is no looking after the other person anymore. There's no community. It's horrible. It's horrible. I mean, there's now a situation in, you know, when I moved out, when I was 17, I got my first job. Well, could I really afford an apartment on my own? No. But I was at least able to afford a room with a few other people sharing an apartment. This is not even a given anymore. I mean, they just released a new set of apartments in Dublin where a 3-bedroom apartment costs €4,500 a month. That's like $4,000. Right? Even if you share with 6 people and you share the bedrooms, you hardly can afford that. I mean, we have it made impossible for them. Absolutely impossible. So would I be keen to go to work for someone who runs a Gen Xer who runs a company and work my butt off if the money I bring in doesn't even pay for rent anymore? Never mind food or anything else. It doesn't even pay for rent anymore. And then we wonder why certain kids have no interest, are disengaging, are staying at home with mommy and daddy. Well, I can't blame them, and honestly cannot blame them. And the whole housing situation is the same all over the world, and it's fueled by greed, poor and honest greed of the generations before them. And that's just one example. So anyone giving out about Gen Z, I would love to just sit back and think about it. If you would be 18 and you look at that, would you be encouraged to work and build a career if there's absolutely no hope to even be able to pay the basic bills if we work hard? At least, and don't get me wrong, I worked really hard. Gen X said worked really hard, but you know what? As harder you work, the more you climbed the ladder, as more you were able to afford. There was hope. You saw a light at the end of the tunnel. And I think this is the problem. We have created a situation where they cannot see a light at the end of the tunnel.
Yeah, I think Generation X was kind of defined, not like characteristically, but it was said that Generation X was the last generation that could expect to improve on what their parents had in terms of standard of living, resources, access to leisure, etc. And that is a sorry thing to hand on to a generation, that you have to get used to living with less. You have to have less joy, less freedom. And yeah, there's talk of these 15-minute cities, isn't there? Particularly in the UK. I'm sure it's, America as well. Your work, your leisure, the people you see, the places you go will all be in a 15-minute radius. Going beyond that may take approval, but there will be no expectation for you to go any further. That's starting to sound like dystopian horror to me right there. And I'm wondering what, if anything, we can do, because we all know that our sphere of influence doesn't reach government. What are our thoughts about how we improve that quality of life, or how we give them the hope that Gabby was just saying, it seems like none of them are gifted with?
This is such an interesting conversation for me because we live, Brett and I, with a Gen Zer. Okay? He's smack in the middle of it. And again, it's just one viewpoint that we're exposed to, which I would imagine within their own generation, like within our own generation, there are different, there's divisiveness, right? Like there's some of us operate this way, some don't. So the viewpoint that we have, to answer your question, all I can do and all I really want to do is be open to listening with real curiosity about the viewpoint that he holds and why, right? And understanding that this is a generation who I believe is not afraid to question, which I really admire a lot, because us as Gen Xers, it was like no questioning. You just did what you were expected to do and what you were told to do. There was no space to question authority or even the way things are. And we have constant conversations in our own house where I'm being posed, but why are you doing that? And I'll be like, I don't know. That's just why. And he'll be like, but so you have no real reason why you believe what you believe, kind of thing. So I really admire their ability to take all the data, major difference. They are bombarded with data constantly that we didn't have. We weren't exposed to it. We didn't have to worry about it. All we had to do is get on our bikes and go live our lives. They don't operate like that. They were never given the opportunity to live a carefree life like that. They're bombarded with shit that they don't need to know about, but yet they see it instantaneously. So they can question. They do deep dives. They get curious and they decide, yeah, I don't like that. I'm not going to do it that way. I'm going to choose to do it this way. They're a lot smarter with their money than our generation was ever taught to be, as far as I can see. From my viewpoint, I was not given financial literacy as a kid. It was not something that we were exposed to. We didn't need to know about it. We weren't taught. So I didn't know how to teach that to my own Gen Zer. He's learned that on his own. They're a lot smarter with their money. They make money, they save money, they invest money, they know what they want to do with their money. I'm really admiring the thought patterns of this generation, because I think that they realize we are doomed by what you guys have done. You've utterly fucked it up for all of us, not just us, but those before us. And now we have to do what we have to do, whether you like it or not, kind of mentality. And I think I kind of admire the hell out of it. They're going to possibly swing pendulums back. I don't know what they're going to do, but I enjoy watching them express their disdain with what we've left them with, and then decide, I'm going to do what I have to do the way that I need to do it, and like it or not. Take it or leave it, we don't care, kind of thing.
And I think maybe what we're seeing is people who will lead. You know, they say, don't they, cometh the hour, cometh the man. Looking at the global situation, even local leadership, they're utterly clueless. They are utterly clueless. They do not know what to do. Gone are the days when a politician would stand in front of you and say, we've identified this problem and this is the action that we're going to take. They don't. They stand in front of you and they give you some bloody bullshit that makes it sound like they're doing something or that they understand it. And actually, you don't understand the full picture, which is why you can't see the progress that's being made. You know, hard times breed hard people who are prepared to make tough decisions. And I don't think any of us are foolish enough to say that we're not facing tough times. The difference is who's going to step forward, who will become the leaders. And I know that not everybody is like Jared. You know, he is a special guy. But we know other people of a similar age who are also pretty darn special. And that gives me hope. So, you know, what I'm hearing is, you know, you're congratulating America and, you know, cheering them on and seeing something. I've actually got hope in them. I'm wondering what Gabby and Brett are seeing as maybe a virtue or a value in Gen Z.
No, I think they have a point. You know, because let's, and you mentioned politics. All politicians do nowadays, they don't care anymore. They just want to make sure they stay in power. So they will say whatever they think is popular, so people will vote for them. It doesn't matter what it is, and they swing in the wind whenever it suits, right? So if you think about it, we have a generation which is facing so many problems, and the leaders in the world are still boomers. Right? They're still living somewhere in the past where it was all about making money, and making more money. And Gen X has bought into that. A lot of millennials have bought into that, right? Having nice houses, looking at, it's all about being seen, you know, all that. And Alpha Generation Z are looking there and going like, what in the name of God are you all doing? It's not only one, it's 3 generations in front of them who literally, let's put in plain English, fucked it up. 3, right? And they're all in charge. So all I can do, if there's a chance that listen and will say, yeah, this is exactly where we are, that's our problem. You know what? Talk to us, and how can we support you? I worked in school and I said to the guys, become politicians. Become politicians. Take over. Get rid of the dinosaurs. Take over, because that's what the world needs. It needs new people with new ideas who actually are here. It's a new world. And the politicians, being most of them boomers and Gen X, they still operate like in the 1990s in mindset. It doesn't work anymore. The world has changed. So please, please, out there, if you're 20, go for it. You know, whatever you're doing, go for it. Look for people like us. I can't do it anymore. I'm too old. Right? It's yours. Take it. The world is yours. Take it over, please.
I don't know if you've read it or if you just got AI to do a précis of the fourth turning or something, but you have literally just paraphrased the whole gist of it, which is that the fourth turning has to do something completely new. It's forging into untested territory. The conservative generations that want to keep things the same because they're secure and they're comfortable need to be challenged. Old structures, old organizations get torn down. I mean, it'll come as no surprise to you that these fourth turnings coincided with things like the War of Independence, the Civil War, another one. I mean, he links them. He's an American author. He links them mostly to America, but he goes back further to prove his point into the old world and the things that were happening. So this is beyond question, in my opinion. I'm sure that some academics out there might disagree, but that's exactly what you just said, Gabby. And it's come to members of the generation who have got some wisdom and can see what they got wrong, but don't have the energy and the drive to make the change and the difference that you guys have. I think that's kind of beautiful that you've reached that conclusion.
I never read the book, but I'm with him.
Yeah.
Have a rebellion, whatever you need to do, but just get rid of those old dinosaurs.
Yeah.
Well, I'm not saying go and murder people, but get into the positions where you can make the change. Have a rebellion of, I'm taking action, I'm getting into the positions, we're going to go ahead and we're taking here over because it's ours to take over.
Yeah.
Boomers are dying, my generation is going soon, it's yours to take over.
A wise rebellion. Yeah, we're not saying armed uprising or civil war or anything of that nature. Some wisdom in the taking control of establishments. Erica, you were going to speak.
No, I've had that exact conversation in the kitchen where we've been discussing whatever, and I'd be like, okay, what do you want me to do? I'm not in a position and I'm not going to be doing any major anything at this point. Who in your generation is starting the revolution then? Because obviously we need it, right? Of whatever that means. So I'm with you. I understand that. My bigger concern is because I'm a parent of one, right? So it's the parenting. The challenge for me is remaining the parent that is transferring the positive kind of things from my generation that I want to see continue, like a strong work ethic, like, being reliable, being consistent, being accountable, all of those things, but not including the, work hard because you'll get what the payoff. Because for me, that led to me just feeling like getting a big dose of fucking burnout because I was taught you got to constantly work hard. I don't want to leave my kid with the legacy of you got to work so hard that you're burnt out. But I want him to understand there's a level of a work ethic you have to have and remain consistent and accountable so that all things positive happen to you, but recognize when you need rest also, because we weren't taught that. And I don't want to perpetuate that into my Gen Zer, right? So that's the challenge I have as being a direct parent of a Gen Zer. There are certain things I'm extracting from my generation that serve me well and that I believe in, that I wanted to have, and others can remain with me here. That's the only thing I know how to positively influence and remain without a gap and a disconnect between my generation and that one. Because I don't like the gap.
Yeah, I think all the things you just mentioned are just really basic human traits you have when you're aware of social skills, like how to interact with other people. And maybe to learn this, to step away from this complete selfishness. Like, I don't feel like going to work today because I don't know, so I stay home, and then your colleagues have to do the double work. So not being reliable, not turning up, all these things. This is hurting the other people you're working with. So it's not a generation thing as such. For me, these are all traits. Everybody who has a healthy social skills will do that, if that makes sense.
Ironically, go ahead, Brett.
I'm looking forward to just seeing what is brought forward and how it's brought forward, because it's not about the wars. The wars are not the way the answer is going to be found. It's about the intelligence. It's about learning from the mistakes that have already been made, and taking the knowledge and carrying it forward, and how they advance would be the way that they choose to bring that forward. So ideally, it would be good to see not such a war, but it may be a war in a different way, like a war against, running, if it is for a position in politics, or, it's the mind. Right now, it's like the mind. And I hope that the basic skills, that's why I say that they're so important, I hope they carry them with them as they do take those positions, the integrity, the accountability, like all of that, and carry that with them forward, and come from a place of knowing what the mistakes were, and show us where we can improve, because that's how we do it together, right? As a community, we learn from each other. And if they can see it, they're at that turning point, that growing space where they have the energy, the spark, the fire, and the go power. So just look at how it's been done, bring that energy to it, but do it in a way where we're not across from each other, killing each other off, because I don't think it has to go there. I think they're smarter and they have a way of doing it, and I look forward to seeing how that is brought out. Like, there's so much stuff out there. Like, just look at AI, and there's so many different things like you can learn, and like even using AI too much is not good for us, because it takes away our creativity and our different things, right? And you can manipulate AI to give people answers that may not be the best. So just have confidence in what's on top of your shoulders and what's in here, and know what you know, and move forward.
Joe, I'm pleased that I sort of yielded to let you speak, because it plays perfectly into what I was going to say, which is that once again we've circled round to the needs, the power, the strength of community. We were all drawn into a sort of highly individual way of thinking. We've seen it with the way our emotions rule us. I feel this, therefore I must, or I am, or I will, whatever. Partly because we haven't had great community, great socialization to a we way of thinking. Our generation has been taught and influenced to be divisive, to go against unity, probably at any cost, because it's easier to run roughshod over individuals than it is, a whole movement or or generation swelling against something. I know that Gen Alpha is already around. I think my son is probably a Gen Alpha. I don't know how that will work. But for Gen Z, I hate saying that, I'm English, Generation Z, they will be looking at community because they know that the only way to make significant change in all of these areas, the poly crisis, is together. There's no way that any individual is going to be able to tackle that all on their own. So, yeah, it's almost like we're coming through the hourglass. We were all condensed into individuation and disunity, and now they're coming out and spreading again and realizing that it's not about nations or political blocks. It has to be a global commons, or else we're not going to get where we need to be. Anybody got any closing thoughts? Go on, Erica.
My closing thought is this. That our future is in the generations below us, right? So our Gen Z, we need to stop shitting on them if we want them to come to us for anything at all, and for them to do anything that changes things. We can't keep shitting on them for being brought up in a environment that we had something to do with creating. So we need to take ownership with our part of that, be open to listening to them and learning from them while staying true to our own values, and stop shitting on them because they were just born into whatever they were born into, much like we were born into whatever we were born into. We didn't like getting shit on. So why are we doing it to them?
Gabby?
No, I think my closing thoughts are exactly that. It's always a kind of a them against us feeling when people talk about generations. And I don't think it's helpful because it's just other boxes we're creating. I mean, if you look at it, there's still people around who were born in the so-called silent generation, and there's so many different experiences. And I think we forget as well how fast the world is moving these days. So, with the fourth generation thing, with the book, I haven't read it, but if you think about it, the world was moving far slower in the old days. So I'm not sure how valid the fourth generation still is as an idea, if we not just have a kind of the whole thing as a cycle, how cycles go. Because if you think about what the world was like when you were born before 45 to what if you're born now, you know what I mean? So much has changed, and it's changing so fast and so quick. So I wish the whole generation discussion would actually stop talking about generations and just start talking about where we at. Where are we all at? Because we're all in this together. We are in this mess we created right now together. And if we want to solve something, we have to do it together. So this whole talking about the generations, it doesn't work. It's more like, let's talk about mindset, what we bring along, the problems we see, what can we do about it, how can we change? And if there's dinosaurs around to have a mindset of a dinosaur, what can I do going into politics and what can I do to actually start addressing that rather than join in with the whole thing? Like, this is the way we're doing it, this is the way the discussion goes online, so I just follow suit. So how can we change it? I'm becoming very kind of in a peaceful way rebellious at old age. Even the way we all live in fear these days, and everything is fear mongering, and these boxes and these people that's their fault and that's their fault. I mean, I had a young guy saying to me, "Well, the environment is such a mess. That's your fault." And I felt like I was one of the founding people in the ages of the Green Party. Thank you very much. We tried. My probably fault was that I didn't try enough or not hard enough, and I didn't go into politics. And the Green Party now, I'm from Germany. You can forget about them. They've completely lost their way. That's not a Green Party we had in mind when we actually founded them. But I can't complain because I didn't go and do anything about anything. I'd lived my own personal little life and had a good time and didn't care about anything else. So I can't complain. I didn't do anything about it either. Right? So do
I was,
something.
I was reminded of Whitney Houston. You know, children are our future. Teach them well and let them lead the way. I mean, that sounds like an instruction from beyond the grave to me. Brett, closing thought, my friend.
My closing thought would be, instead of pointing fingers, it's your fault, and that's anybody. How about we work together and support, whether it's emotionally, monetarily, beliefs, thoughts, right? And have those conversations. It's like that community. What is it that you're looking to build? What is it that you're looking to grow? Well, when you mix all the generations together, when we stop pointing fingers and we start coming up with a way of how can we make this better, right? There's got to be a way of opening up and listening instead of saying, pointing and saying you could say, all right, so we already know XYZ. And, I feel that it could go, and then have collaboration, just people working together and checking the boxes and hearing the other person instead of that button being pressed and a trigger and then firing up, right? Like, be in check with yourself. Like, it's not to get you fired up. Maybe it's to get you to put your part in that needs to be heard so that the other person can be heard. And then you come out with the win, with the answer, with a solution or a direction, right? It's going to take everything from everybody in order to grow into that space. Right? There's the opportunity for us all to come together in as a community, right? And it's not even so much. Look at the community we have here. We're not even in the same area, but we have a community. So there's a way of doing it that was never been in the past. So there's the learning and how can it work without like the greed or there's something there with that piece, but it's got to be at a certain level, obviously, because you don't want it to be too high. But yes, you do have to make money, but you know what I mean, because there's something about the money that is relevant, right? Because if it's like, oh, I'll just give it to you for free, well, then what am I getting for free? Because it's probably not quality. So there's got to be checks and balances and a reality check and just keeping up with each other and keeping everybody in line and balanced. So I'll leave it there.
We could have a whole conversation about people needing to pay to perceive value. And I suspect that is a cultural thing as much as anything. We've been taught to believe that. But I like the fact that we are hopeful for Gen Z, that we have some trust that they will actually make the tough decisions and walk the difficult walk, and that we've all expressed the desire to support them from what wisdom we have in their energy to make change and difference. So if you're a Gen Zer and you have got anything to say to us, please leave a comment. As always, contact details are in the description underneath the episode, and we will be back with something else to tickle your fancies in the not too distant future. Until then, peace out, brothers and sisters and non-binaries and anyone else.